I got 7. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7 p.m. We are hereby calling the Planning Commission meeting for February 28th, 2023 to order. As the elected chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission are not present this evening, we are going to need to have the planning commissioners elect a chair for the evening. Planning commissioners, may I have a motion and a second for this evening's acting chair?
I move that Richard Mayo be our acting chair for this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. And we will have a vote. Commissioner Chanou,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
and Commissioner Tomachek.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries on a 5-0 vote. Our acting chair for this evening will be Commissioner Mayo. Commissioner Mayo, if you would take the center stage, and we will have you act as our chair for the evening. John's going to do it. John, okay. Acting Chair Mayo, we are on item 2 for our agenda.
If anyone that would like to speak hasn't signed up yet, please do so. Mr. Gurman, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Zhang,
Present.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Present.
Commissioner Calling, absent.
Yep, absent.
Commissioner Mayo,
Here?
Commissioner Dunn,
Here.
Commissioner Tomachek,
Here.
Commissioner McConnell, absent, and Commissioner Boschert, absent.
Absent.
Roll is complete. We do have a quorum.
Yep, 5 of us here, we have a quorum. Consideration of minutes for the previous meeting. Do we have a motion?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for acceptance of the meeting minutes for February 14th, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Tomachek. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Minutes pass. Okay, comments have been accepted electronically and via voicemail and email. All the comments are in the packet that was posted. The comments that came in after the packet, we've received separately. So we did have those and we have read those. Dave, can you please read the agenda?
Yes, sir. So item 3A for this evening, we have annexations of 5 properties. 9889 Alcott Street, known as the Brosh property. 12620 Zuni Street, known as the Bushnell property. 7371 West 92nd Avenue, known as the Diekman property. 68th Avenue and Federal Boulevard, known as the Federal Boulevard South property, and the 3421 and 3431 Moscow Court annexation, known as the Moscow Court properties. The second item on the agenda will be public hearing and action on a rezoning, preliminary development plan, and official development plan for Huron Farm. That's item 3B. And item 3C will be a public hearing and consideration of a preliminary development plan amendment and an official development plan amendment for the tri-state subdivision.
Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing for 3A. And we'll start off with the Bosch property. Anybody want to speak in favor or opposed? What's that? Oh, Steph, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay.
We'll
Good evening.
bear with
Commissioners.
me.
Let me switch glasses here so I can read what my name is Patrick Caldwell. I'm a senior planner with the city's planning division. This is the annexation, comprehensive plan designation, and zoning designation for 5 separate city-owned properties. The properties are the Brauk property with an address of 9889 Alkire Street, the Bushnell property with an address of 12620 Zunai Street, the Diekman property with an address of 7371 West 92nd Avenue, the Federal Boulevard South property with no address but a general location at West 68th Avenue and Federal Boulevard, and the Moscow properties with addresses of 3421 and 3431 Moscow Court. 4 of the 5 properties have been purchased by the city to become part of the city's open space inventory. The 5th property, the Moscow Court site, was purchased for right-of-way for Creekside Drive at the Westminster Station area. Tonight's proceeding is essentially a cleanup effort to officially and correctly account for these 5 properties, to include formally annexing the properties into the city, establishing zoning and allowed land uses for each of the properties, and establishing a comprehensive land use designation for each of the properties. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the annexations, zoning designations, and comprehensive plan land use designations to the City Council. Due to the procedural nature of these 5 items and to enhance meeting efficiency, staff did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation for these city-owned properties. Staff is prepared to answer any questions that the commission may have. As a part of bringing this project before you, a staff agenda memo has been created and tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. The agenda memos with their associated attachments and the public notices that were mailed and posted and published in the Westminster window are hereby entered into the public record. The notices met the timing required for mailing, posting, and publishing. The notices of the public hearing were mailed to the approximate 3,000 residents within 1,000 feet of the properties under consideration tonight. The city also posted the hearing and time on its website. And I have a couple corrections. There are several corrections on sheet 5 of 7 in criteria number 4. In the agenda memo for the Diekman site, the county of the Diekman site is incorrectly stated as Adams County. The Diekman site is located in Jefferson County. Attached maps and legal descriptions correctly located the site in Jefferson County. Staff apologizes for that error. Additionally, the mailed notice incorrectly stated the address for this site as 7179 West 96th Place. The correct address is 7371 West 92nd Avenue. The vicinity map that was included with this mailed letter correctly located this site on West 92nd Avenue. Also, the posted and published notice correctly listed the address as 7371 West 92nd Avenue, and staff apologizes for that error. If approved tonight, these items will move forward for City Council first reading on April 10th and April 24th for the second reading. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you for that. Okay, at this time, if there's anybody that wants to speak for or against any of these, we'll open the public hearing.
If it pleases the chair, I do have one comment that was submitted to us via email
Okay,
on this item, and then I also have a sign-up sheet, and I can read the names for you. So to
Great.
start with, comment for item 3A, the annexations. This is from Catherine Aronoff. To whom it may concern, on the Westminster City, on the City of Westminster Planning Commission. Hello, my name is Catherine Aronoff, and I live at 6101 West 92nd Place, Westminster 80031. I would like to provide some public comment into the discussion about the property at 7371 West 92nd Avenue. As a local homeowner, I believe it is very important for the city to expedite improving the site to open space. Since I purchased my home in 2020, there have been 2 separate fires at that property. Not only is the current property visually unappealing, but it is a threat to public safety. Thank you for your consideration, Catherine. For tonight, on our sign-up sheet, the first person that signed up was Ted Rossi.
To propose a rejection to the planned entranceway modifications, Quail Hill. I'm probably the oldest. I believe I was the first resident to move in.
This is for the annexations.
Oh, I'm sorry, I crossed my name off of that one. I was a Quail Hill and it.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
yeah.
All right, we'll try again. All right, Teresa and Anthony. Dongert? How badly did I butcher that? Okay. Daugert. My apologies.
Seeing what has happened to the property of the dog park and things that were and late last year with regard to impact to area residents on the dog park activities for that open space. And so our concern is.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, could you speak right into the mic for me?
Okay.
Thank
Do
you.
you want me to start again?
No.
To try and understand what the county has planned, are we looking to expand more parking for the dog park over there? That access comes off of a shared driveway with our neighbor. And so again, now that you're annexing that property, that may or may not increase road traffic on Elkhire into that property. So we just want to understand those aspects of what the city has planned with regard to open space uses. I know that our stretch of Elkhire is only maintained by the county. So with that annexation, then how does that affect road maintenance on Elkhire? So those are the questions that okay. Do you have any more?
Yeah, I've got a couple to echo what my wife was saying as far as God forbid another dog park, but also our neighbor. That's the only driveway coming into his house, and when the property was originally built, it split into a Y. So now the Westminster has that, who maintains the driveway, who keeps it up, who plows it, whatever. And our concern obviously is, again, how much traffic, dependent on what its purpose would be. I don't know if there's a master plan to get from Sims all the way to Indiana with open space. which would be fine, wouldn't bother me a bit. It beats the heck out of Arvada, which nothing but residential and commercial property. So yeah, one, I applaud Westminster for buying it for open space. But then it's what happens then. So, and then also to me, because we live across the street on Alkire, west of Stanley Lake. Gorgeous, gorgeous view, property, everything. Okay, to me, open space has become a generic term. Open space means nobody can cross a barbed wire fence and go in because the Eagles. Open space means, oh my gosh, everybody and his brother can let the dog run out and do whatever their business. So when it just says open space, it's almost defined open space. Does it have only one definition, or does it have 5 or 6 of them? So that's part of our concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any response to that, Mr. Caldwell?
So we do have staff present that could answer some of these questions. Whenever the planning commission would like to hear from the staff, just let us know.
Dave, are there other folks here to speak to any of the annexation items?
Yes, we have 3 more people who have signed up to speak to the annexations.
Okay,
Okay,
gonna
let's do them all at once.
we
And
could-
then
yeah,
come back.
Joe Reale with the Parks Department is here, and he can speak to the questions that were just asked and perhaps to the future questions.
Sounds great.
Shall we
Next up-
continue?
Next up,
Okay, next up is Mr. Steve Bettis, please.
There, I'll make it short. Thanks for listening. I'm the neighbor that is right next to the property. Just really what Terry Mark, what's going to happen to it. I help quite a few people round their dogs up off my property. There's coyotes up there. There's lots of fun stuff to chase. Lots of, there's a lot. And the other day, a couple weeks ago, just gal came. The dogs were all over the place trying to catch this. I think they're after the coyotes, but that's not a good situation. They need to live there too, but still, if I'm right there and you got dogs all over the property, I got 2 dogs, 2 horses, everything. I don't need those harassed by just dogs all over. At the last meeting that I was with, there's been so much destruction and the amount of people that hit that dog park all the time. And neighborhood across the street's been affected by all the traffic. Someone's talked about drug deals over there. There's cars are late at night. It's pretty buried back in there. And to this, I get a lot more traffic up because that sign went up. Down my road, which I think I own half of. Pretty sure I've been told that I own half of that road. I maintain it. I plow it with Joe's help. But I've got a lot of more traffic down that road, parking there, and do I have to be the monitor now? I bought that property to be at peace back there, and I'm fine with it. I love it. It's great, but a parking lot for dog parks, or I don't know what the plan is. So keep that in mind. Joe's been great as a source. We don't know what's going on with it. So, it's a pretty dangerous intersection now to get out. In the morning and evening, bicyclist things. You're gonna put a light there. That's the plan, but I don't know if that is. It can be tough getting out. So anyway, thank you very much.
thank you. Next up,
Okay, next we have Gary Phelps, please.
This is concerning the Diekman property. So on your site, you mentioned a 2-year plan for the cleanup of the site and of the debris. And so I would just suggest that that be done as soon as possible. It's been an eyesore for the city of Westminster for years. And it's worse now since the latest fire. My other question is, I know the city bought the property, but what kind of remediation is going to be necessary to make that an open space? I was told by the city that there's asbestos removal that need to be done before this last fire. And so I'm wondering what that meant for that neighborhood, given they had a fire there in the last month or two. What concerns should there be for the neighbors in terms of hazardous waste or the asbestos that was airborne? I looked online after the fire and I saw nothing about the asbestos issue at all. So that's my question. And then what is going to be done for the site to make it safe to become open space, given the fact that there are these issues with the site? And I was told by the city about the asbestos. I knew nothing about it. But so if you could answer those questions, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up,
Okay, our next speakers are Jill and Kip Funk, please.
Speak about the Brock property.
could you give us your address?
It's 9999 Alkire.
Thank you.
We're on the north side of that driveway. And we watch them maintain the driveway and everything. We have the same concerns. Traffic is a big concern. How many more cars are gonna be going back there? Do you guys have a plan for those cars? We already have traffic on the north side of our house from, City Westminster. Have traffic on both sides of my house. I mean, I live out in the country. I moved out in the country for a reason. There's not a lot of traffic out there. You guys are gonna make a lot more. So I'm curious if you guys have a plan for that. Is there gonna be another entrance for that property from another direction? Or is that the only plan you guys have is from Alkire side? The dog park has been a problem out there. We constantly have dogs out there. We have 2 dogs of our own. It's kind of tough to let them outside without knowing whether there's a dog out there that's going to chase them around or not. People don't watch their dogs out there at the dog park. I know you guys built a big fence around the nuns, the church property up there, to protect their property. I don't know if you guys could make the same consideration for the rest of us that live out there. And I know you annexed around us. I don't know why that was. Nobody came to us and asked us if we wanted to be annexed into the city of Westminster, but not sure that would be something we would do, but nobody asked us. So it's consideration and it's a concern. So curious. Did you have anything else here?
Yeah, I do want to know the plan because I've heard, trailhead there. I don't want dog park, don't really want a trailhead. The dogs have killed our goats. We lost some goats to the dogs
And chickens.
yeah. And, our nice farm life is going. And I want to make sure our egg status is not going to be affected. Our egg status. if that zoning is gonna change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also informed that we now have a few folks that have signed up to be live online.
Okay,
And the instruction I've been given is for those folks, if you would, to please use your raise hand feature on your GoToMeeting, and you will be brought in one by our IT specialist to speak. Thank you.
doesn't seem like that's working.
Here comes Curtis. All right, so I beg your pardon, none of them chose to be called upon. This would bring us, Mr. Chairman, to anyone else that might have missed the sign-up sheet this evening.
Yep. Anyone else would like to speak before we close the public hearing and hear from staff? Okay, seeing none. Who would be the best person to start here from the city?
Joe Reale, I'm the Open Space Superintendent for the city.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure to speak with you. Really appreciate it. I hope I caught everybody's comments here, but if I miss anything, please ask. I'll start with the 9885 Alcar. First and foremost, the driveway there, that is a shared driveway. It is not just ours, it's the Bettis's as well. And so responsibility, maintenance of that. Steve has been a wonderful neighbor, and I hope that we've been a wonderful neighbor as well. There is no intention to allow public access into the open space utilizing that driveway. It's not an appropriate trailhead area. It doesn't fit in safely with our system, so that's not an intent. We do not have a long-term plan for that piece of land. We're evaluating the buildings. I would think at this point, based on what I know, the buildings will be removed. It will be converted to open space land, but there's not going to be a direct public access to that place off of Alkire. Potential in the future for trail development if other connections are made, that's a possibility, but that would be a longer term planning process. I also heard a number of comments this evening about the broader dog park and the issues there. I do want to let everybody know right now, we have just begun what we're calling the Westminster Hills Area Management Plan. Our website should go live next week on that, but we are going to be soliciting comments about the use in that area. This piece of property is considered part of all that Westminster Hills planning area. So we are looking at the future of how we manage that land right now. As far as the usage, the definition and what we can do allowably for open space land is actually in our city code. And that's part of Title 13 in the city code. It specifically says our open space is set aside for, first and foremost, preservation of natural resources, and then passive recreational use. The allowed off-leash dog area is actually a special council. Council gave special permission to allow that feature in that area based on some considerations that we will evaluate as part of that larger plan. This time, there is no intent to expand the off-leash dog use to that area. And in fact, the last time that was looked at, the off-leash dog area in 2009 was reduced. Used to go all the way out to Indiana. It is now reduced down to basically being parallel with Sims, with Alcar, my apologies. So I do not anticipate any expansion of that in the future. Pretty sure that covers all of 9885. As far as the Diekman property goes, the city has been interested in purchasing Diekman property for a number of years. We were aware prior to the first fire, we had done our due diligence on the property that there was asbestos. The house buildings of that type, it had linoleum flooring, it had some drywall that had asbestos in it. After the first fire, which happened under the first homeowner, that is considered a spill by CDPHE, by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. We bought the property knowing there was a spill, knowing that we were then taking on responsibility for that mediation. We purchased the property just about a year ago this month. We have been working on permitting to get that cleaned up since that point. The second fire now has set us back a little bit. We have to go back out and redelineate the spill boundaries. That's being done right now. Contractor was out there last week doing soil samples. We intend to move very quickly with getting that cleaned up. I anticipate that the property will be clean within the next 3 to 4 months. After that, it will take us some time to go in and do restoration, but the intent right now is to restore that as a grassland. So we'll be bringing in native seed soil amendments to plant grassland. Longer term, this piece fits in with the bigger open space. There's connection potential with some other acquisitions to build trail connections all the way into Walnut Creek. That's the primary reason for this purchase. And ultimately to get the the Farmers Highline Canal Trail, which is parallel to the road, off the road, and down onto the property. I believe that covers all the questions. If I've missed anything.
I think that's got them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion on the first one, the 9889 Alcar Street?
I move that to recommend the city. All right. I move to recommend city council approve the annexation of property located at 9889 Alkire Street. Recommendation based on finding annexations compliant with section 1151 of the Westminster Municipal Code. Also recommend that we approve the comprehensive plan designation as city open space for that property based on a finding comprehensive plan designation supported by the criteria set forth in 11.521 of the Westminster Municipal Code. And further recommend city council approve the designation of zoning as O1 for property located at 9889 Alkire Street based on a finding that zoning designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in section 11.5.3 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Go ahead, Dave.
Just briefly, just want to thank the residents of Alkire Street of coming out and speaking tonight. I have a Cocker Spaniel and I spent the entire pandemic in the dog park. So, and I promised my dog did not kill your chickens, whichever speaker that was or anything. They'll kill a stuffed animal. That's about it. But, I'm in favor of expanding the dog park to a degree, but at least, but it makes more sense there, not when it's so close to the neighbors. I don't want it, and we don't want to add extra traffic or anything. It's, at some point, there's so much of this land that's built up. It would be nice to have more access for it, but I do appreciate you bringing those concerns out, because I didn't realize that so many owners were not really managing their dogs out there like they should be doing. So just want to thank you for that.
Any other comments? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomachuk.
Yes.
Motion passes on 5-0 vote.
Okay, do we have a motion on 12620 Zuni Street annexation? Okay, Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hereby move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the annexation of property located at 12620 Zuni Street. This has been based on a finding that the annexation is compliant with Section 11-5-1 of the Westminster Municipal Code. I also move that we recommend that the City Council approve the comprehensive plan designation as open space for property located at 12620 Zuni Street. This is based on the finding the comprehensive plan designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-21 of the Westminster Municipal Code. Finally, I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council to approve the designation of zoning as 01 for property located at 12620 Zuni Street. This is based on a finding that the zoning designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-3 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Acting Chair Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomachuk.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 5-0 vote.
Do we have a motion on 7371 West 92nd Avenue annexation?
Chairman, I move to recommend that City Council approve the annexation of property located at 7371 West 92nd Avenue. This is based on a finding that the annexation is compliant with Section 11-5-1 of the Westminster Municipal Code. I also move to recommend that City Council approve the comprehensive plan designation as city open space for property located at 7371 West 92nd Avenue. This is based on a finding that the comprehensive plan designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-21 of the Westminster Municipal Code. Further, I move to recommend that City Council approve the designation of zoning as 01 for property located at 7371 West 92nd Avenue. This is based on a finding that the zoning designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-3 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that one? Go ahead.
Not necessarily a question or a comment on the motion, but I just want to go on record as encouraging the city to address the hazardous materials and asbestos issues on the property as quickly as reasonably achievable. having been in the fire service in past years and had to deal with properties. I'd also encourage perhaps greater policing of the property for people who may be misusing the property while it's sitting vacant.
Any other comments, Mr. Chairman, or tongue-tied,
That's fine.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll echo Commissioner Tomachek's comments and also just express my disappointment that permitting is delaying the cleanup of this property that's been an eyesore for so long. It's amazing how sometimes, even when the government tries to help, we get stuck with the red tape. So I look forward to 3-4 months down the line seeing the beginnings of maybe some green space there.
Any other comments? My comment would be to thank Parks and Open Space. I believe they addressed all of the concerns that I have in my notes here from the testimony. No other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Acting Chair Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomachek.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 5-0 vote.
Okay, do we have a motion on 68th and Federal Boulevard annexation? Mr. Carpenter?
I'll give it a shot. I move to recommend the city council approve the annexation of property located at West 68th Avenue and Federal Boulevard based on the finding that the annexation is compliant with section 11-5-1 of the Westminster Municipal Code. I further recommend the council approve the comprehensive plan designation as city open space for property located at West 68th Avenue and Federal Boulevard based on the finding that the comprehensive plan designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in section 11-5-21 of the Westminster Municipal Code, and further recommend that city council approve the designation of zoning as O-1 for property located at West 68th Avenue and Federal Boulevard, based on the finding that the zoning designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in section 11-5-3 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments, discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Acting Chair Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomachek.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 5-0 vote.
Okay, 3421 and 3431 Moscow Court annexation. Do we have a motion? Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to recommend that the city council approve the annexation of property located at 3421 and 3431 Moscow Court. It's based on a finding that the annexation is compliant with section 11-5-1 of the Westminster Municipal Code. I also move to recommend that the city council approve the comprehensive plan designation as city open space for property located 3421 and 3431 Moscow Court. This is based on a finding the comprehensive plan designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in section 11-5-21 of Westminster Municipal Code. And finally, I move that to recommend that the city council approve the designation of zoning as SPD for the property located at 3421 and 3431 Moscow Court. This is based on a finding that the zoning designation is generally supported by the criteria set forth in section 11-5-3 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Acting Chair Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomacek.
Yes.
Motion passes on a 5-0 vote.
Okay, that completes 3A. Let's move to 3B.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a point of personal privilege just to acknowledge Patrick Caldwell, who has made his last presentation to the Planning Commission after 24 years on staff. I've known him for the last 11, 12 years, something like that, and he's always been a friendly face at the community meetings and everything, and I just wanted to make sure we give him his appreciation and due tonight. So thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Okay, a staff presentation for 3B.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jacob Kaza. I'm a senior planner with the city's planning division. As a part of bringing this project before you, a staff agenda memo has been created and tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. The agenda memo, its associated attachments, tonight's PowerPoint presentation, the public notices published in the Westminster window, the mailed notices, and the posted notices are hereby entered into the public record at this time. I'd also like to state that we have received several additional public comments after the date the packet was published. Those have been provided to all of the commissioners before the beginning of this meeting, and there is also a copy in the back of the room on the table as well. So those comments will also be entered into the public record. The notices of the public hearing were mailed to 23 property owners and 1 HOA within 500 feet of the parcel under consideration tonight. The city has also posted the hearing date and time on its website. Here is the map of the Huron Farm property. The parcel is outlined in red. The parcel is located in the southwest corner of West 148th Avenue and Huron Street. On this slide, you can see the proposed rezoning from O1 to PUD. You will notice that all of the surrounding properties in the city are already zoned PUD. PUD zoning is required for any property over 2 acres in size that is seeking to rezone. The preliminary development plan and official development plan would facilitate the subdivision of the property into 2 lots. A new home would be constructed on the western lot, and the existing home would remain on the eastern lot. The access point for the new home would be to the north along West 148th Avenue. The new ODP also requires that the owners of these 2 lots take over the maintenance of the landscaping within the right-of-way on the southern side of West 148th Avenue, as is required by city code. Section 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code contains 10 criteria that are to be considered when reviewing rezonings and preliminary development plans. Staff finds that the preliminary development plan generally meet these criteria as outlined in the agenda memo. Several examples of these criteria are that the PDP is compatible and harmonious with existing public and private development in the surrounding area. Streets, driveways, access points, and turning movements are designed in a safe and convenient manner, and that the PDP will not preclude future public land dedications. For those selected example criteria, staff finds that the PDP is compatible with existing developments in the surrounding area. that the access point is designed in a safe and convenient manner, and that the PDP will not preclude future land dedications. Section 11.5.15 of the Westminster Municipal Code contains 16 criteria that are to be considered when reviewing official development plans. Staff finds that the official development plan generally meet these criteria as outlined in the agenda memo. Several examples of these criteria are that the plan exhibits sound, creative, or efficient planning and design principles. The architectural design of the structure is compatible in terms of shape, color, forms, and material, and existing streets are suitable to carry the traffic. For those selected example criteria, staff finds that the ODP exhibits sound planning by avoiding the use of a flag lot, that the architecture meets the design standards and reflects some of the common modern home designs, and that the surrounding road network can accommodate the additional 10 daily trips generated by the new home. Staff's recommendation is to hold a public hearing and recommend that City Council approve the rezoning, PDP, and ODP. Staff finds that a recommendation of approval of the applications would meet the city's strategic plan priority of ensure that Westminster offers a diverse range of amenities and activities for residents, businesses, and visitors that honor the city's history and support the arts, parks, recreation, open spaces, and libraries is met by facilitating infill development within the city. The applicant is with us tonight and also has a presentation to share with you as well. They'd like to go, I think, right after me. And then we also have several staff members who would be happy to answer any questions this evening. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. The applicant is ready to make their presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Spencer, Sterling Design Associates, 2009 West Littleton Boulevard, Littleton, Colorado. Thanks for having us here tonight to be able to present this before you. Thank you, Jacob, for your presentation. You can move to the third slide. One more there. So just to give you a brief history on the project, the current property owner moved there in 2015. They were looking for a larger area, a larger space for their growing family. They do foster children. They have adopted some children, so they have a large family. And since that time, they were trying to look at ways to make use of the property and possibly provide some more area to be able to expand. In doing that, they considered building a second house. This second house would be mainly for family themselves and possibly some extended family. And so they approached the city with the proposal to build a second residence. The city requires that in order to do that, they would first have to rezone the property from the current O1 designation to a PUD. This property, just a little history on it, was part of Adams County. If you look, can you go to the next slide there? You can go a couple more. One more. This is the Adams County zoning map. As you can see in the gray area, that is all Adams County, and the green is the city of Westminster. You can move one more. And then this is the city's zoning map. And as you can see, this property is essentially a small corridor between the city and Adams County. Adams County to the north of 148th, and then Adams County properties directly to the south. All these properties, including this one in Adams County, are an A3 agricultural designation. I don't know all the particulars of the annexation history, but when the property was annexed, the properties to the south were also considered in that, and those owners declined to be part of that annexation. However, the former property owner went through with it, and so this little property is kind of in this corridor as part of the city of Westminster. When that annexation happened, as I understand it, the city automatically designates it as an O1 zone. I believe that's correct. So in order to build this second residence, it would need to be rezoned to a PUD. and therefore it falls under the subdivision criterias of the city code. And so looking at it, you can the next slide, please. And so looking at it, it's 2.4 acres. And it made the most sense to push the new residents towards the west, while still making use of some of the area between the existing residents, which faces Huron Street, or better yet, the Huron frontage road, and 148th. And so we've carved out a space on the west side for this new house per the city code, and have worked diligently with staff to address concerns that were brought up during the neighborhood meeting related to access, in particular related to access. And so in doing that, we located the proposed driveway as far to the east as possible, and have the house kind of nestled to the west. We are meeting all the setback criteria that's required by the city code with regards to the location of that house. Yeah, that's a good slide. So what you can see up here is the ODP site plan. This shows a little bit more detail. Again, the PDP is more general in its nature, but the ODP gets a little bit more detailed. So you can see the driveway. As part of the location of this house and working through that, sanitary was one of the items that needed to come into consideration. The closest sanitary connection to a city system would be 400 feet to the west, within the Quail Hill subdivision. That's beyond. We would have to do a mainline extension. That's an excessive cost to do that. And so we are proposing to go through with a leach field. And that, as you can see there where it says proposed lot 2, Huron Farm, that where that text is where that proposed leach field would be. And so we've needed to kind of work the puzzle of the site around to try to accommodate some space for that. Other considerations associated with that are also for drainage. We haven't got to the CD phase yet, but we are, the location of this took into consideration the existing drainage patterns and how we could account for the required drainage infrastructure. And so the house location is based on that criteria as well. We can move on to the next sheet here. This is a footprint or a floor plan of what the ground level would be for the proposed residence. The next 2 slides are essentially the building elevations that we are looking at for the new residence. If you go to the following slide, please, Jacob. This picture right here is actually a picture of the residence. It might have some minor tweaks because this one actually has a walkout basement level as well. But as you can see the various materials that are being proposed for the house. It's quite handsome, and it fits in really well in the area. Part of our request in this PUD and PP are for various exceptions to the criteria set forth for subdivision development. We have 9 exceptions that we are seeking as part of this. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the PUD, or with the subdivision criteria. A lot of those have to do with public open space, detention ponds, mail kiosks, signage for the subdivision. Most of that criteria is developed for a larger subdivision. So if someone were to come in and build, 10 or 24 homes, then these would apply to that. In this case, we have a homeowner who's looking to build 1 additional house on his lot for his use. We're going through the subdivision process and splitting it into 2 lots so that we can adhere to the city code for that. But some of these criteria don't seem to necessarily be applicable for this project. I'll just run through those. We have 9 of them. We're requesting an exception to the 30% common open space requirement. The standard for that, based on the comprehensive plan, is that residential under one dwelling unit per acre, development standards list 30% of the overall site must be preserved as common open space. This would be essentially the part that we are providing. And so we are seeking an exception to be required to provide 30% as a designated open space. The second exception we're requesting is 4% of the site be used as a private park. Again, if we were doing a large subdivision with many residences, this would seem more applicable. In this case, for two houses to have their own private park doesn't seem applicable. And so we're asking for an exception for that requirement. Number three, an exception for detached sidewalks along Huron and 148th. This is also typical of a larger subdivision. Could you back up a couple slides, please, Jacob, to kind of the overall site? Just one more, kind of the aerial. There we go. So this property, again, is in this odd corridor sandwiched between Adams County agricultural land, you know, the main Huron Street, and then the frontage road. And then we have the Quail Hill neighborhood directly to the west. Quail Hill is accessed mainly by 148th, which runs along the north side of this property. Those are larger residential lots, more estate type lots, custom residential. There are no sidewalks within that property connecting to any infrastructure along Huron. There's nothing along Huron Frontage Road as well. The closest sidewalk would be a little bit further north. There's a wall separating. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. There's actually a wall that separates Huron from the frontage road. And so putting a sidewalk, a little strip of sidewalk along 148th, it doesn't seem to go anywhere. And it's basically encouraging a lot of pedestrian traffic in that area. We just didn't feel like it really made sense to provide that. And so we're asking an exception for that as well. The third exception, or the fourth exception, was the request for streetlights. There are very limited streetlights in this area. This is more of a kind of suburban or even peripheral area of town. It's very lowly lit. There are mainly streetlights at main intersections, and having this area lit up just doesn't seem to fit within the current area. So we are asking for an exception from that. We are also asking for an exception for the mail kiosk with a solar light. That is also a typical thing. Again, two residents have a mailbox on Huron for the existing residents, and then one on 148th. That seems to make more sense. We're also asking for an exception from the subdivision monument sign. Currently, the Quail Hill subdivision monument sign is right there on the tip in the median of 148th. As soon as you turn off a Huron, there's a monument sign there. Can you move up two slides, please? There you go. So this is a picture from the intersection, looking up 148th, looking west. And as you can see right there, there's a subdivision sign. It would seem ludicrous to have two subdivision signs. So we are asking for relief from that as well. The water quality and detention pond. While this is typical for larger developments, in this case, we've been able to grade the site and address the drainage concerns. We are very limited on the imperviousness that we are increasing, and we feel we're still meeting the criteria by draining to the right of way. Staff seems to be in support of that as well. And so we are asking for relief from creating a separate detention and water quality pond. And then the next few are related to the single family residential design criteria. Again, these also are somewhat related to larger developments where the city is looking for some cohesiveness within neighborhoods. There's a certain amount of required points that are necessary. Some of these have to do with materials, some of these have to do with bay windows, some of these have to do with eaves. We are requesting a relief from having to comply with 3,218 points. We are currently, excuse me just a second. We are currently providing 1,675 of those 3,000 points. Again, most of those are driven towards larger subdivisions where there's some continuity between the residents. In this area, there is no continuity. There are residential, either farm homes or custom residential within the Quail Hill neighborhood. And then the box windows, that was one specific criteria is requested in there. We are seeking an exception to that. And then we are also seeking an exception to the fence, which is number 9 in our exceptions request. For this, just to kind of sum it up really quick, for a larger subdivision, when you have a fence out there, they're looking for the fence to jog every so often and provide pockets of landscaping. We have a cohesive fence there right now. Part of it will be a masonry wall with stone, a part of which already exists. The other existing fence, wood fence on the east side, is to remain. We are augmenting that landscaping and bringing it up to code. And so we are asking for relief from having to create a separate jogging fence along that length there. Jacob, could you go back to there we go. So this is kind of a rear picture of that house, again, with a walkout basement. So if you took that balcony and took off that walkout basement, that's essentially kind of what the back side of that house would be. Currently in the site plan, that would be facing to the south. And that's currently an ag property with a big horse barn, and they do a bunch of equestrian related things there. So again, it seems to blend in with the neighborhood. It might not be exactly the same as some of those houses in there, but it is a custom home. And we feel that it is very compatible with the area and wouldn't detract from the existing neighborhoods or the look and feel that the comprehensive plan is asking for. I just want to address really briefly, we had a neighborhood meeting. We had concerns from the neighbors regarding the access drive location for safety as they come around the bend there from the west, and then related to the landscaping. There appears to be some misunderstanding that Huron Street is a private roadway into Quail Hill, and maybe that's, I don't know where that came from, but maybe because the sign out there up front, it kind of leads you to believe that, hey, this is our grand entrance. Unfortunately, that is right of way. And as staff mentioned, we will be augmenting that landscaping, bringing it up to the current standards with street trees and plantings, maintaining that as well. So any maintenance that's being done by Quail Hill will now be taken over by the current ownership of these two residences. So tonight, I just want to ask that you guys consider the requests again for the PUD requirements and the PDP. Of the 10 requirements, we are meeting all 10 of them, complying with the comprehensive plan. We are exhibiting, sound and efficient planning and design principles. It was brought up that we could consider doing a flag lot through the other property. That just doesn't work for various reasons with relation to life safety and fire access. And the address is going to be off 148. So that drive really needs to be off 148. The exceptions we're asking for, again, are all based on the fact that the single family residential standards are primarily set to accommodate larger residential subdivisions, which we don't really fit with. We are compatible and harmonious with the existing public and private development in the area. We're providing protection for the development for potential, any adverse influences. Again, this is a single family residential, not multifamily. We're not increasing traffic. We're not doing dog parks. Those kinds of things. We are harmonious with the neighborhood. No, we have no adverse impacts to existing or future land uses in the area. The streets and driveways and access points, these have been designed and coordinated with traffic, with city staff as well to make sure that they are safe. The right-of-way, we are not doing anything that would preclude any future right-of-way dedication. And then we are, including all the necessary performance standards to ensure, reasonable expectations for any future development should land change hands down the road. And we are not in default, or the client is not in default to any outstanding obligations to the city. So we would ask for your approval tonight, or your recommendation for approval. I'm certainly open to any questions if you have any.
Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome. If you have any, we'll be here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the planning commission? Go ahead, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. One, the 10 daily trips alleged for the new residents, that just seems high. I was wondering if our traffic engineer, Mr. Klein, would be able to address that, or the applicant, either one. So that just seems high.
Good evening, Heath Klein, Transportation Engineer, City of Westminster. So thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. So 10 is kind of high on the single family resident, but it is within the ITE for the trip generation for a single family dwelling unit. So we would err on the higher side here, just because during construction, there's going to be some more traffic. And then with the nature of a larger family, that is why. But I don't see it really exceeding too much above the 10. And I don't know if they're, even reducing it down, it's typically 6 to 12 is a good number for a single family resident.
Okay, perfect. Thank you
Thank you
for answering that. And I guess the other one is for staff. They're talking about maintenance being taken over from the new residences there. Is that a note on our ODP or PDP to make sure that that actually happens?
Yes, Commissioner Carpenter. So their ODP, specifically in the landscaping pages, has a statement that the owners of Lot 1 and Lot 2 of this subdivision are required to maintain the right-of-way along the south portion of West 148th Avenue, and then the Lot 1, the eastern lot, is required to also maintain the landscaped right-of-way of Huron Frontage Road. Then that landscape plan has also been divided kind of visually on the landscaping page to show the landscaping with each lot and show that that lot in the future in perpetuity will have to maintain that area of landscaping.
Right. And if they don't, there's a code, it would be a code violation.
Correct.
By code enforcement.
Correct. If they don't maintain it in the future, it would be a code enforcement violation.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all I have for the moment.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's open the public hearing. We've taken comments via email and voicemail. And anybody wanted to speak, had a chance to sign up on the list?
Acting Chair Mayo. We do have 8 different parties that have requested on the sign-up sheet to speak tonight. We are also informed that we have no live call-ins. We also do not have any pre-recorded messages, so it's only the folks that we have here presently signed up and anyone who might have missed the sign up.
Okay, great. All right, let's start with person number one, and we'll limit comments to 5 minutes.
Okay, now, Mr. Rossi, we're going to try this again. I think I got you on the right one this time. Ted Rossi.
You've got 4 minutes and 30 seconds left.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come and voice opposition for this plan change. I'm probably the oldest resident there in years and in time. My house was probably the second one that we moved in. It'll be 30 years in June. I actually started the process in there before Westminster ever annexed it. The contractor that originally started that didn't even have a permit with Adams County to start the project. Soon it was shut down. Carlson's bought it. Carlson sought Westminster to annex it, and it got annexed into Westminster. At that time, Carlson said until there's 48 lots, when the majority of lots were full, that we would take over the homeowners association. From the beginning, the Carlsons ran it. They said the entranceway would be the responsibility of the association once we took it over. Okay. After we formed our own homeowners association, our goal was to improve on the entranceway, and we've been doing that for 30 years. We've been paying all the water, we've been paying all the maintenance, we've been doing all of the work at the entranceway from when we started our association. At that time, Huron was just one-way street. There was no development at the orchard. We came to the city when they started the development at the orchard and asked about the entrance in and out of the Orchard Mall. We were told that it's your entranceway. If you want the entrance going in and out, even with 148th, fine. If not, we'll move it. We didn't want the traffic coming in and out of our development, so they moved the entranceway. Every word that we got was it was our entranceway, our responsibility to take care of it. When they put in all of the new Huron and they start watering the grass with potable, non-potable water, we asked if they could tap in so that we could water the grass in our entranceway with the non-potable. They said, no, that's your responsibility. It's your entranceway. So we've been paying the bill on the water, mowing the grass ever since. So it's a shock to us when we find out we don't really have any say what goes in and out of the entranceway. Now, I'm worried about what kind of precedent this may set, not only for our community, but you may have other communities where this may set a precedent for them that would not be not be favorable to the city. Now, looking at the design of the home looks beautiful. Okay, but it is behind the placard for Quail Hill. It's the first home you're going to see driving into Quail Hill. The association has no say over how it's maintained because they don't belong to the Quail Hill Homeowners Association. So if the house goes into disrepair, the yard goes in disrepair, we don't have any say on what happens or how it's brought up to standard. Okay, that's one issue. The second one is the property that you're talking about splitting into two already has access to the back property. There's two driveways, one driveway into the house, another driveway on the side of the house that goes into the back of the property. So in my opinion, that's kind of overkill. The gentleman did mention about a mailing address being on 148th Avenue. And I wonder if some of the other properties to the south that have structures in the back of the lot, they have addresses both on Huron, all on Huron. So I don't see that as an issue. What I see as an issue is we have been taking care of that entranceway, presuming it was our responsibility all of this time. The city has told us everything from here on in is our responsibility. So we've been doing it for the last 30 years. So with that, thank you very much for letting me come before you, and I hope you give it good consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Okay, next we have Lindsay Stelmach.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to speak and voice our opinions. And
Address?
Address 14711 Calumet Court.
Thank you.
So I am part of the Quail Hill subdivision. I'm a homeowner there. I'm also on the board of directors for the association. However, right now I'm speaking just as the homeowner. I kind of want to paint this picture of you. You're driving in on a beautiful boulevard. You've got the sign there in the front. And that's really kind of what attracted me to buying within the subdivision in 2020, actually, right before the pandemic. Go in on this beautiful boulevard and you see all these custom homes and big, large lots, very estate looking, absolutely gorgeous, piece of heaven. I'm thrilled to live there. My neighbors are wonderful. It's a very tight knit community. The HOA is all volunteer work. We don't have a property manager. It's all us. It's just us. And it has been for 30 years. We have volunteers that go out there and fix the sprinkler heads on this boulevard. We have homeowners that redo the valves. I mean, it's all organic. It's all us. And like my neighbor said, you know, for 30 years, we thought that was ours. We've been maintaining it. We've invested money in it, thousands and thousands of dollars. Watering, I mean, you know, the water rates with Westminster, that was fun for the last few years. So it's a significant amount of investment that this community has spent over the course of the years. And I know we don't fall under the guidance of adverse possession of this right of way because it is a right of way. It's city land. I get that. But for 30 years, that's a long time. And I hope that, you know, the placement of the driveway is what I'm kind of complaining about. I think there is a clear alternative and already existing access road on Huron to that back section of that lot. So there is a clear alternative to this that does not involve disrupting 30 years worth of maintenance and landscaping. We haven't even talked about the removal of 30-year-old large evergreen trees on the corner of there. So there's a lot of landscaping that would be torn out. I get that it would be replanted in some fashion, but you can't replace 30-year-old trees. There's also sections of the wall that would be removed as well to aid in the line of sight for the traffic. So it's just not a good fit for our neighborhood. It just isn't. And I hope you give 30 years of home ownership and maintenance of this area to the 48 homeowners in this unit, in the subdivision, kind of some sway that we do not want this. We do not want that access road going across that right of way there. That's about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Next, we have Charlene Baker, please.
Could you go to slide 26 up there, please? Okay, this is what she's talking about, that boulevard, before I start with my comments. You guys need to understand.
Ma'am, excuse me.
Could we have
Could you
your
please speak into
address
the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
and state your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Charlene Baker, 14761 Calumet Court.
Great, thank you.
All right. I'm just wound up. You have to imagine that you're going up this road, and then on the left, you're going to cut out trees, bushes, all kinds of stuff, and put a driveway in there. So that's just a visual for you, okay? I am an original homeowner in Quail Hill. We bought our lot in 1992, paid for it, and then we moved in 1995. I'm wondering how this benefits Quail Hill. So far, everything benefits this new situation. I am advocating that the Huron Farms use their current driveway, which enters and exits off of Old Huron Street. If you allow this to happen, are you going to allow
the neighbors on the north to subdivide, even though they're in unincorporated Adams County, but to do that. Quail Hill owners paid for the 148th entrance with an impact fee that was in addition to our lot price back in the 90s. The cost was shared by everyone in our neighborhood using that road. There was no other entrance or exit at that time until Silver Hills built, and 148th was actually a dead end. That was the only way you could get in off of Old Huron, and there was no other way out. Huron Farms was not originally in Westminster, but originally was unincorporated Adams County. So now they want to tie in for free when they already have an entrance exit to their Huron or on Huron. For approximately 8 years, Huron Farms has not finished the wall on their property. If this plan goes through, who's going to monitor, and I think some of that's been brought up, the upkeep of the south side. As an HOA, we have no power to do this because they don't belong to our community. Also, the plan is to tear out 30-year-old trees and landscaping that Quail Hill paid for. Again, Huron Farms has no accountability. Who's going to refund us? I don't want to think bad of people, and I'm sorry, but originally we were told this was for foster care. That was my understanding. So is this just a quick way to build a home and get a quick buck after it's subdivided? And I don't think that driveway is safe for coming off on 148th would be good for foster kids. I feel we're being bullied by the city of Westminster. You are taking a 30-year-old neighborhood and changing the quality and standards of what we built to have someone in a pseudo Quail Hill neighborhood, one who has all the benefits we worked for and paid for. This is not compatibility. This is not harmonious. Why is it so important for the city of Westminster to benefit one recent city owner over the 48 others who are longtime residents of the city? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeremiah Christensen.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Jeremiah Christensen, 14742 Calumet Court. My property backs up to 2 doors down from this, so I'd be staring out the back. I moved there 7 years ago. What I find is very interesting is just listening to some of my neighbors that have built those homes in there, lived there for 30 years. I absolutely agree with them that they know better than everybody within the city of Westminster how this was set up. I'll tell you that because I also know probably none of you were here when this was set up. Maybe you were. I don't want to assume that, but none of you were, right? And how we've had to take care of it and what this is. I also know the records are horrible within the city of Westminster. I say that also because when I built an outbuilding in my property, oil easements that were supposed to be removed when all the property was done were never done. Well, they were actually done by the oil companies, passed through several times. City of Westminster couldn't keep up with it. I'll tell you one thing I'm doing tomorrow is going to your planning office to find out if those oil easements have been removed. Because I went and got the letters. I talked to 7 different oil companies to get that removed. Your records were just bad. Once I got a letter from the oil company, they all should be removed. All of my neighbors should not have oil easements all over their property from the old well before our neighborhood is even built. I'm going to guess that I'll go there, talk to them tomorrow, and they're still all there. So I make that point because nobody knows what's really supposed to be. So the precedent has been that for 30 years, we have taken care of it. We have been told by Westminster, no, you can't have our water. No, you can't have this. You can sure pay for all of that. And now when it's convenient and there's tax revenue on the line for the city of Westminster, it's okay to cut that in. That's fine, David. You can smirk all you want. But building that big house that doesn't look anything like the 48 homes that are in our neighborhood or the homes that it will sit next to, which to be honest with you, all those unincorporated Adams County and the home on this property are junk. There's junk everywhere. There's broken down cars in the backyard. I stare out my backyard and see random motor homes sitting back there, broken down cars everywhere, right? So this isn't going to be in our HOA. You say you will enforce it. I heard the question about code enforcement on it. You don't enforce it now. There's businesses being run that are not supposed to be run. Nobody can enforce it. Your folks tell me, sorry, nothing we can do about it. So I have zero faith that you can enforce it or do anything. This doesn't match. This doesn't fit, right? And the only reason they definitely need this tapped into that line isn't because of an address. It's because if you build $1.5 million house and the residents of that eventually will live there have to drive by the piece of crap that's in front of that house, it won't be worth $1.5 million. Be worth $1.5 million, $2 million if it enters our entranceway. It is obviously an entranceway. You drive up the neighborhood, it looks just like an entranceway. We've been taking care of it. We just spent $40,000 last year to maintain the north side of it. So that won't be taken over by maintenance. So we have to continue to maintain that, but we can give this part to these people and they will maintain it. That'll be fine. We'll have half an entranceway to the neighborhood I spent $750,000 buying a house in. It makes zero sense. I agree with my neighbors wholeheartedly. Every vote I've seen is everybody's against it. I just don't see it other than it's a quick way to make a buck, as people said, to drop another $1.5 million home in there. Y'all can pay taxes or get taxes on and collect all that water revenue on. My taxes have doubled since you did that. That's my tax for living in Westminster, is $1,000 water bills. You guys can keep collecting that.
Next up, I believe it's Paula Wiley.
Hello, my name's Paula Wiley. I live at 14762 Calamath Court. And I am also a 30-plus year resident of Quail Hill. Ted, who so eloquently spoke for the founding of our development, moved in June. And we were lucky enough to move in September and make this our home and our community for the last 30 years. I'd like to start with a couple of questions. As you can also see from, as we talk about our history with Carlson's and with our concerns with the city of Westminster, we have had a bit of bait and switch that's gone on for the last several years. We've been told one thing, received another thing. We've been given one set of nice master plan or expectations or the model that we're showing you expects, but so my questions right here tonight are, one is, why is this second home being pushed? So if the first home is so close to the east on this property that we're looking at, why is this other property, new home proposal, being pushed so close to the west? My second question would be, if this really is legitimately meant to be for two homes, why is the second home a single lane driveway as close as it can be to the curve? And it's hard to, I live here, I see this every day, it's hard to explain. But you come up a big driveway or road and go into a curve. They're putting this single driveway right at the curve. So, devil's advocate, what is the next plan for that middle set of property? As of today, it's a 2.4 acre minus one. I don't understand the math exactly. The proposal for the new home is 0.8. It still leaves 1.5 where the first house is. What's going to happen when they're asked to divide that? Are we going to be looking at a second driveway pulling into a driveway pulling out into a road that is not even a standard road? Again, the Carlson agreement, this road is very narrow. There are no gutters. There are no sidewalks. There's no room for parking. What happens when these people have neighbors or visitors, I'm sorry, that come and visit? My second question would be, if this does go through, we do end up with this, we do end up with a road, a driveway onto our road, could at least be further down where it can be safe for everybody, including the young children that will live in that home. The second would be, why would you allow for a separate homeowners association that would include 2 homes? That when they go defunct, I mean, one person forecloses and there's now no longer a homeowners association. Who is going to maintain? They should be joining us. They should be part of us. As Charlene mentioned, when you come up through our medallion into our into our housing development, they visually look like they should be are part of us. They should be part of us. So basically my 2 conclusions would, beyond my questions of what's the ultimate goal, is they should join our homeowners association, and the driveway should be widened and moved further down if we lose the battle to not have it be there in the first place. I believe, because again, generally meets. Our housing development has been a lot of years with generally meets the requirements, only to have that not be what actually turns out to be. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up.
Wesley, and I'm sorry, I can't make out the last name. Okay, thank you, sir. Underwood. The next person would be Tate Dooley. Is there a Tate Dooley here tonight? Okay, our next person would be Nancy Bowman, Buehmann. I apologize if I mispronounced.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nancy Beeman. I live at 14757 Osage Court. I've lived in Quail Hill for almost 30 years now. Not quite as long as Ted has, but I'm probably younger than he is. Maybe not. I echo the sentiments that I hear from my other neighbors this evening. As I've been listening, I've also looked at the standards that have been provided in back. I've been looking at the 11-5-14 standards in particular. And as I've been listening to these comments and I've been reading through these criteria, from my perspective, this proposed plan does not meet criteria 4, 5, and 7 for the reasons that my other neighbors have eloquently indicated. I also have another question that my other neighbors haven't come up with yet. It has been my understanding that there are some underground utilities that run adjacent to the south side of 148th Avenue. If my understanding is correct in that, would we have to move those utilities? And if so, what would the cost that the Quail Hill Homeowners Association would incur there? Again, I'd like to reiterate what Lindsay and other folks have and Charlene and others have mentioned. You know, I've been paying homeowners association fees for almost 30 years now to maintain the landscaping into the main entrance into the subdivision. And I'd like to see this investment protected. So that's all I have, less than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes all of our comments that folks have signed up our sheet. It would just be if anyone else wants to speak that hasn't signed up.
Anyone else like to speak? We have a hand. Come on down.
Yes, good evening. My name is Stephen Platt. I live at 14682 Calabath Court. One consideration is on the S bend, the thinking of putting a driveway in. It faces on the east side when you drive it out of Quail Hill. So you have the sun in your face and the S bend right next to a driveway, which I think could be hazardous for the people living in that house, the new house, and also the people driving in and out the estate. I think that's could be a very severe hazard situation for safety. We walk our dogs there quite often at the weekends, and we see the cars coming around there. We really have to stay on the grass away from the road for safe passage there. And I think that entranceway will be hazardous and not safe for the residents and the proposed homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that would complete all of your public testimony.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Oh, come on down.
Beg your pardon.
My name is Fred Good, 14651 Calumet Court. Basically, what I'd like to do is kind of talk kind of to the fairness and the original design of our development. Charlene spoke about the fact that during the development, each lot was assessed a cost to acquire and develop in the entranceway. The design of the entranceway was presented and agreed upon with the city, what it would look like, inclusive of a island in the proximal to the old Huron, where it would have a monument to the name of the community, to indicate that you are now entering. This is Quail Hill that you're entering. The cost of that development was borne by the developer and assigned to each of the properties. They bought it, and then, according to the PDP and ODP, subsequent to upon completion, it was deeded over to the city of Westminster with the agreement on the ODP that we would maintain it at our expense. And for 30 years, roughly, that has happened. The bulk of our HOA fees go to the maintenance of that entranceway. It is really, when you look at the original design and the way just driving through, you recognize this is a design feature of Quail Hill, the development of Quail Hill. It is a design feature that identifies and is kind of the hallmark when you go into the community. And the homeowners have paid for the development. Now, beyond that, have paid for the maintenance for 30 some odd years. You add it all up, beyond the development, it adds up to over a couple $100,000 we've put into the maintenance of this thing. So, it almost feels like there should be some acknowledgement that this design feature is something that should be protected for the community, the Westminster community of Quail Hill. It feels as though, and I kind of echo a lot of what's already been said, but it just feels like this gifting, I would say, of this amenity that was developed, paid for, and maintained by Quail Hill to this one single property, one single house that 48 houses have paid for and maintained for 30 some odd years, seems rather unfair that that their value of their property, as was previously said, is greatly enhanced by having to breaking up this 251 feet of frontage on the southwest part of the entrance, which now the fencing, which was part of the original design that said that there would be fencing on both sides, creating a corridor going back into the development. Now you're going to take away 251 feet of it, and it basically becomes the front yard of this house that didn't contribute to the development and maintenance. It just seems to me quite unfair. So, and I also agree that the the concept that it needs to have 148th Avenue address does not make, that doesn't ring like something that should be an important factor here. There are other flag lots, and I see no reason why this couldn't be one if that's what you want to do. I just see that it just doesn't make sense that this should become, that we should basically dismember this entrance design feature that was approved and designed with the cooperation of the city of Westminster 30 years ago and maintained ever since by Quail Hill. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, does staff or the developer like to make a rebuttal or to comment on anything they've heard up to this point? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Jared Milius. I am the resident there at 14781 Huron Street. So these, in fact, are my neighbors. I'm not going to speak for or against the plan as it's set out right now. I'm obviously hopeful that you're favorable to it. I mostly just wanted to stand because they are my neighbors, and I wanted them to know that for the most part, and almost to 100% of what they've said, I'm in agreement with. I am the beneficiary at that property of their long and hard work and expense of that landscaping, and it is beautiful, and I am humbled by the work that they do out there. I do, in fact, mean that. I am wide open to the idea of a flag lot. I would love to finish that wall. I would love to improve that entryway the way that it was meant to be. I would love to facilitate that. I just know that the city planners in this case have thought through those different options, and they're smarter than me and have thought differently. So I would mostly, I would be speaking to my neighbors behind me in the hopes that we can be cordial still with one another and understand, or at least be able to speak, that we have some real common agreement and areas of agreement on this. That said, I do hope that you're favorable to it, and I, of course, will take any questions that you might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, let's close the public hearing, and I'd like to hear from the developer and if you could respond to some of the comments that came up, some of the questions that came up. Seems that the common theme is the road and the driveway.
Yes. So I appreciate everybody showing up tonight. Again, that's why we have these public hearings. As Mr. Milius mentioned, we have considered other ways to do this. And this is how the plan is going based on direction from staff and all the considerations that go through from engineering, traffic, planning. Again, trying to meet the criteria set forth with the city code. I did take a bunch of notes. Again, most of them have to do with, like you said, that front entry. I speculate to some degree that when this first became part of the city of Westminster and was annexed Quail Hill, that sign was out there, yet this property was part of Adams County and not within the control of the city of Westminster. And hence that sign got placed out on Huron at that time as the entry to Quail Hill. Since that time, this property has become part of Westminster. That right of way was then deeded over to the city with the agreement for maintenance. And so we have this somewhat conundrum where we have the Quail Hill entry sign out there front and center when you turn onto Huron. However, that right of way technically is not, belong to Quail Hill. I think, I think the points are valid that, this house then presents as the first residence in Quail Hill. However, it is not part of Quail Hill HOA. That's all a private agreement and private development. This is completely separate. So I don't know that there's, you know, a desire to join Quail Hill. I don't know if there's some other option for, you know, working with the neighborhood to possibly amend that entry in some way so that this does not read as part of that. Again, we did contemplate the flag lot possibility. I don't know if that's, I don't know that that's viable. I think there would need to be more conversation with staff and the owner as well on how that could happen. We have utilities and the like that we are tying into that are directly in 148th. There's probably a possibility of connecting to those in Huron. Those are quite long runs, but we would have to have more discussion on that. With regards to, I think the safety that was brought up and the location of that driveway, again, trying to preserve some of that property that's existing there in between the existing house, the new proposed house, providing room for the leach field and also preserving some of that area. There's a barn there and a few other features that are currently being used, a large garden. These, you know, again, this is for one family, so these would work together. And I think one resident, you know, mentioned the view. Well, the view would now be this residence and associated landscaping and improvements there, not that kind of utilitarian area that's behind the current house. The drive location, again, we've moved as far east as we can at the moment. Again, it's one driveway, so it's not really much different than any of the other driveways that are along that roadway as you go into the residential neighborhood. All those driveways just empty right out onto the street. You know, there are some trees that were mentioned that are on that bend just on the northwest corner of our property, some large spruce trees. Due to visibility and safety, we are required to remove those trees to improve that and provide the necessary site triangles so that there's clear visibility for folks that are heading east around that bend and also for the resident coming out of that driveway. So those are safety things that have already been discussed with traffic in our reviews. And again, I understand the cost of the maintenance over time. Again, we're not, you know, there's not really much we can do about that. Our ownership would take over that maintenance cost, all the watering, all the maintenance, including planting additional trees and landscaping out there to beef that up and bring it up to standards. So I can't speak to, you know, the 30 plus years that that's being maintained, other than we would be, you know, improving that as required. And that's above the standards that were there set back 30 years ago when that developed. I think that's probably about it. Again, we're not, we're following the code and trying to develop one residence according to the standards and criteria set forth. And this is how it's laying out currently. So we're open to speaking to staff and working through some other alternatives if there are. But we can't really go back in time and try to take care of some of that past maintenance costs. I would say it would be a benefit to them from here on out if that does get handled by somebody else, and that bill is footed by somebody else. But
Okay, thank you. Who on staff's gonna be best suited to talk about the flag lot and the driveway?
Chairman, I can answer that.
Okay, thank you.
So specifically for the flag lot question, so that has been analyzed by staff. We have looked at that. There are a couple different issues that come up with the flag lot. For one, it would be a run of about 400 plus feet. We do require those to be paved driveways, so it would need to be either asphalt or concrete. That's very expensive to install that, and it's very expensive to maintain in the long run. There is a publicly accessible right-of-way that is a public right-of-way directly adjacent to this property. So in essence, it can be served directly from that property through that public right-of-way. Additionally, for the flag lot consideration, we have to think about emergency services and emergency vehicles like fire engines and ambulances and such. A 400-foot run that you'd have to go down with a fire truck, especially the giant fire trucks that the city likes to buy, and then turn around would require them to install a 96-foot wide circle to do a turnaround with a truck. And we're required to force any new development to build turnarounds for trucks, specifically the largest truck in the city, regardless of whether it shows up. So they'd have to build a 96-foot wide turnaround on there. And it also would need to be able to hold a 70,000-pound truck. So you're talking, again, 96-foot wide concrete turnaround. And lastly, the issue is the complications that come with flag lots and understanding the maintenance obligations of those. Essentially, the Quail Hill neighborhood was it's a giant flag subdivision. And you can see that the perception of who owns who's supposed to maintain what can be very confusing over time. So that's generally a couple of the reasons why the city opposes flag lots in general, and especially for flag lot of this long of a distance.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And one last thing, Commissioner, they cannot be served by any sort of water utilities in Huron. The only water line that they could be served from for this house would be the one in West 148th Avenue.
48th. Okay, thank you. Any commissioners have any questions for the applicant or staff? Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 7 pages worth of notes here, so let me go through that. I just want to. This is more for staff here, but let's just go through this here. I don't have the right-of-way limits on. I'm struggling to find that on any of the maps. Is West 148th Avenue is the north line of this property the right-of-way limits, and does that go all the way up across that landscape area north of the road to the property line north of there? I can't. That's probably not the right.
Yeah, yes, Commissioner. So in the two images here, the PDP and the ODP, there's a very dark dashed line. Mm-hmm. That's the property line and the right-of-way line for West 148th Avenue. And then the tract of 148th Avenue for the right-of-way goes all the way up to that next property that's in the county.
Okay. So are there any restrictions recorded on, because I assume that even though Westminster's record keeping, I know that there are records we don't have from 30 years ago, but I assume that this was recorded on the subdivision plat as well as ODP and PDPs in the county recorder's office, and it states what restrictions may exist, correct?
Yes, the right-of-way is clearly shown on the plat and the PDP. It's a combined PDP ODP for Quail Hill. Both of those, I can pull up a copy of those if necessary tonight, and I have shared them with the HOA as well. Okay. and members tonight.
And were there any access restrictions recorded to 144th Avenue either on the plats or on the ODPs or PDPs in the area?
Not that I'm aware of. I have not read one on any of those documents.
Okay. So then it sounds like then the answer, if somebody in the Adams County lot the north side wanted to subdivide their lot, they could theoretically punch through to access 148th without any issue.
So that would, I believe, require them to annex into the city, and then they'd have to be subject to our regulations. So just because there is public right-of-way doesn't mean that the city has to grant you access to that. Mm-hmm. So by law, we have to give you one access point. They already have an access point to public right-of-way, but they would not necessarily be just automatically granted one. They would need to come through the city and get permission to do so.
Okay. So because the subject property we're talking about now is already in the city, they don't have to jump through that level of hoops because they're already in the city, and therefore they theoretically can tie in anywhere on the public right of way.
Theoretically, yeah.
Yeah. Were there, can you give me any idea as far as there a lot of the residents were talking about maintenance agreements with this monument sign that's out at Huron Street, or the Huron Street frontage road, I should say, and what was required there. Do you have any, what's the records show as far as that goes? How are those agreements set up? Are those entirely private agreements, or those agreements with the city as far as what's required to be maintained there by Quail Hill HOA?
Yes, Commissioner. So those would most likely be the ones that they're talking about with any sort of Carlson farm, or where they were required to pay like a lot fee, a lot impact fee. Those are very typical for any subdivision. All of the homes that we all live in, because I know where several of you live, but all of those homes have had a lot premium attached to them to cover the cost of infrastructure and development. Those are all private agreements the city is not party to. So the city is party to the PDP and ODP. That is our maintenance agreement with them. That is the regulatory document that says what the landscaping is supposed to be, and also stipulates that the HOA is required to maintain that landscaping in that public right of way. That's very typical. My HOA has to maintain right of way in the public landscaping. Interim planning manager McConnell, his HOA has to maintain landscaping in the right of way, and I could go down the list with all of you. So that's what the city is a party to, is that PDP ODP, and it does include a monument sign out there. The landscaping is not in the same configuration as what it currently is, so it is different than as shown. The two spruce trees are not a part of their landscaping plan currently, and it's just slightly different.
Okay. I was also going to ask about those spruce trees, the ones that they're talking about removing for site conditions. And if it's causing a site condition for a driveway, is it also causing a site condition for the visibility around that curve in general? From there, would these trees already need to be trimmed or removed just for site conditions for the speed of the design speed of the roadway? This might be Mr. Klein.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to Mr. Klein about this. So one option is if we were seeking to preserve those trees, we could stipulate, rather than removing them, that they limb the trees up to about 8 feet in height. Not the prettiest thing to do with spruce trees, but where they are, I don't have a PDP or ODP that shows them on that location, and I don't think we would approve them in that location because of the site visibility issues, just with a roadway without a driveway. But if you'd like to say anything else to that. Okay.
All right. That's good. Let me just continue on through here. Is there a policy of any sort where the city is encouraging a single family development for the purposes of tax revenue?
No, Commissioner Carpenter, there's not. And we get this question a lot. And the city's tax revenue, so we get two sources of tax from new development. One is the initial tax, where you pay a permit fee, and then a use tax. And then the second one is property tax. The city's property tax rate is 3.65 mils. So it's actually one of the lowest property tax rates of any city in the Front Range. But so we don't make a lot of money. The city does not generate a lot of revenue off of property taxes, not to include other things.
So. Okay, so use tax, whatever the material cost is basically of the house and infrastructure that gets built for this, correct?
Correct, Commissioner.
And be a fraction of the city budget, if at all.
Correct. I believe approximately 70% of our budget actually comes from sales tax. So that's the better bread and butter of the city's revenue.
All right. So then we can say that that's not a baseless assertion. But let's see. Now, I did ask about code enforcement in Westminster. Now, one of the speakers talked about junk on the Adams County properties. Does Westminster code enforcement communicate with Adams County code enforcement, or does Adams County even have code enforcement to deal with quote unquote junk?
I'll just speak with a little bit of allegory because I'm not part of the code enforcement team. We do speak with them. My understanding is that they have a lot more to cover per staff person, and that it's a larger challenge for them to enforce in the county. That's just from anecdotal from our staff.
Okay. Something else the Quail Hill people asked or mentioned was that when they were irrigating this entryway, we have the non-potable water that's watering out in Huron. Why did we not allow them to buy a tap for non-potable water, since that does seem like it would be an appropriate use of that water if it were available?
I'd have to just guess at a reason, and I wouldn't know the real answer.
Okay.
The way he made it sound was whether the city would come in and put a connection in for them, but I don't know if that was what he meant.
Yeah, well, it seems like regardless of what happens, it seems like that should be something that's revisited. At least because it would be a slightly lower rate, and it would also be reclaimed water versus fresh water. And yes, we do know what the water bills are, even though they are still cheaper than what they were a couple of years ago. So let's see. I did want to ask one other thing on the road access. Do we have any place in the city where we do not permit driveway access to a road from a house into a roadway?
Yes, we do. So specifically arterial streets, and then on collector streets as well. We won't allow you to have a rear pull out onto a collector street. You have to have a front exit onto that. This is a local street, so we allow full driveway access onto local streets.
Got it. Do we know why sidewalks were not required to be installed at the time of construction?
I do not.
Because it's already substandard from a safety standpoint in that regard.
I agree with you, Commissioner.
Okay, let's see. Does the city have can the city put any stipulation on that the new properties join the Quail Hill HOA?
I'd have to ask the city attorney for advice on that.
Could you repeat the question, Commissioner?
Yes, Deputy City Attorney. Can we as the city put a stipulation on that the new properties, the subdivided properties, must join the Quail Hill HOA?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but that is certainly a recommendation the commission could make. And then if it is not allowed by the code, then that could be addressed at the city council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Yep, those were, yeah, I think that's, I get it, but I think those are all of my questions at this time summarized there, but thank you.
Go ahead.
This is a question for city staff. You mentioned that this particular property wouldn't be able to pull utilities off the Huron frontage road. Could you explain why that is?
Yes, Commissioner. So my understanding is that there's not a water line that's close enough of the adequate size and type for them to pull off of, and there is a water line in the landscaped section of that right of way that is 20 something feet from their property line to access. So that's where we would recommend they access. One concern we have is that we require fire sprinklers in all new homes, and you have to maintain adequate fire pressure. And the longer run you have in a pipe, it drops your water pressure, and you can't serve a fire sprinkler with that. So that's, I'm not sure if 450 feet, we didn't actually look at it from that perspective, but 400 and something feet to draw a service line from the main would be a very long run.
Understood. I'm actually a fire protection engineer professionally, so I understand what you're saying. So getting back to the question of ownership versus maintenance versus a bunch of other things. From the comments that were made via email that were included in our packet, there seems to be a lot of legal questions as to who actually owns that land and who's been responsible for maintaining it. The question of fairness is certainly there, but I'm looking more from a legal aspect of it. If these folks have been legally bound to maintain this property for a lot of years and effectively going to just take it away from them, it seems like a problem in the city code and the development process at its heart. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, Commissioner. So the right-of-way section for West 148th Avenue was dedicated to the city as right-of-way with their subdivision plat, 1992, around that time frame. So right-of-way belongs to the public. It's to the public of all people. Dedicating it to the city means the city is the controller of the right-of-way. So we get to dictate certain things. There are certain things we don't have control over in the right-of-way, you know, like cell phone towers is the new one. We're not allowed to control cell phone towers in the right-of-way. But we do have some other controls, such as access to the right-of-way, connecting driveways and such. That is a legal mechanism that I'd have to ask Attorney Graham to stipulate how far back that goes, the concept of public right-of-way. Under the city's code 1175, Title 11, Chapter 7, Section 5, and it'll be in B or C of the subsection, it requires that the property owner adjoining the right-of-way is responsible for the maintenance of all landscaping, of the landscaped portion of the right-of-way, as well as snow removal. Also adjacent to that is the requirement that a homeowners association must maintain all landscaping on right-of-way and common tracks as shown on their ODP. So the PDP ODP for Quail Hill shows the landscaped area of the right-of-way at West 148th Avenue, and it includes specific notes about the maintenance responsibility for the HOA to maintain that landscaping in perpetuity. City staff, seeing that this new owner would need to access the right-of-way, and thus he is now the beneficiary of this right-of-way, he should be the one to maintain it. Now, I believe we could probably come up with some sort of carve-out provision in the PDP and ODP to keep the maintenance burden on Quail Hill and still give him the access point. But I believe the applicant kind of stated it. That keeps them footing the bill for the landscaping, whereas we came up with a plan to have the new owner foot the bill for the landscaping maintenance in the future, as city code kind of stipulates. So we're kind of in a zone where the existing ODP PDP says Quail Hill shall maintain this, and we're going to introduce a new ODP that would say, no, it's now this person's responsibility. So it's now, it would supersede the old ODP.
Okay. This, in my experience, I've lived here since 1993, to let a lot of the folks out there know that most of us have been around that long. I've not seen too many situations like this where a limited number of homeowners would effectively be attaching themselves to an existing neighborhood. Usually when the developments happen, they're large enough that you've got a distinct division between old neighborhood and new. This one is hard, admittedly. What assurances does the existing neighborhood have that these new folks are going to continue to maintain their property consistent with the remainder of the neighborhood? We're effectively putting them at a disadvantage with an unknown property owner. And Not that the current property owner has this problem, because he's only been there a relatively few years, but historically, this property obviously has not been maintained consistent with its neighbors. Other than assurances that we're going to do code enforcement that I'll agree with a lot of folks we don't do very well. How do we help them out better than what you've presented thus far?
I think one option would be to, you could include a condition of approval that would say, recommend to city council that lots 1 and 2 of Huron Farm don't do any maintenance, and the maintenance obligation stays with Quail Hill. I don't know that that's favorable to them.
You hear that? That's I'm in the same boat.
The other option would be is that it's the same thing as we have everywhere across the city. Is it's the and any neighbor has to have some sort of reliance that your neighbor is going to maintain the property and maintain their responsibility. It's the same situation as you and your neighbor next door mowing his lawn.
So I'll follow on with that. Historically, we've expected developers either through an HOA or some other legal or financial mechanism to have the funding to perform that maintenance. With just 2 property owners there, do we have any assurance whatsoever that that's actually going to occur?
So we don't actually require an HOA to have like some sort of surety account for maintenance. We don't require that of any HOA or homeowner in the city to put up some sort of cash fund for surety. There are several HOAs in the city that have gone defunct and no longer operate, and they no longer maintain things. So just to say that we can force him to form an HOA, or even that we could force him to join Quail Hill HOA, and that they'll never go defunct and that they'll always continue to maintain it is not something that we can guarantee as city staff or the city in general. I'd say that the condition of having right of way that's adjacent to your house or in front of your house is probably the most common situation in the city. Most people actually have about the right of way line probably goes several feet into your front yard. You are probably mowing the right of way every single time you get your lawn mower out.
I can guarantee I'm not, but that's a different issue.
In essence, this is just somebody who's going to have a very large, these are already really large lots. The Quail Hill, those are all about an acre in size. The current property owner, he's got 2.4 acres right now. So, adding on another half an acre or so is generally, the same size. He have to have the same level of equipment and expertise to maintain that space as he would to maintain his own property.
Okay. On the plans, there's a proposed septic field. How many of the homes in the Quail Hill neighborhood have septic systems versus sanitary sewer?
I'm not aware of any home in Quail Hill that has a septic system. I believe they all connect to the city sewer system.
So other than the extended line that it would take to get there, what precludes them from connecting into that sewer?
It's actually a gravity feed issue. So the existing line that's in the Quail Hill subdivision, not only is it too far away, it's too high up. So if you extended the line, it couldn't be gravity fed from this home.
Okay, is there no line in Huron?
Not that's accessible to this home. Same issue, too far away. And this area is very flat. We actually have, I think, at least one pump station to serve, sewage pump station to serve this northern area of the city.
Okay.
So that's an issue we have across the whole northern sewer basin.
All right. And there's a utility corridor that runs on the south side of the property. What goes through that?
Are you referring to that 10-foot drainage and utility easement?
Yeah.
Let me pull up the utility plan. So we don't show it with any utilities in there. It's likely that there might be a CenturyLink or a Comcast or even an Excel, or I'm not sure if United Power is up here in there. But I believe that easement was probably recorded with the plat. This neighborhood, if you'll actually see in the grayed out area, was part of the Robin Hill Farm subdivision, and it's very typical in a subdivision to require that there be easements placed adjoining the lot lines for the future placement of utilities in the future, including dry utilities. Typically with an on-lot utility like this, the city does not like to put our wet utilities in there, but we will allow dry utilities like gas, electric, and telephone to go in there.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff?
So I've been going back and forth on this. Obviously, the current residents who live in this Quail Hill neighborhood have a deep historical tie to it, and it seems like they've invested a lot of resources into it. On the other hand, also, this is private property, and I think that's important to note of the homeowner who will, or property owner who will develop on this. It appears to me one of the concerns that keeps running through my mind is that maintenance process and who's going to be the caretaker of that. And I want to allude to what my colleagues have referenced of assuming that there's no city ordinance or code violation of potentially adding a condition that the property owner join the Quail Hill subdivision HOA. I guess I want to ask the Quail Hill neighborhood, would you be opposed to that, assuming there's no legal barriers to that of the property owner joining your HOA? Because in my mind, if that is the case, then you will have a say in that maintenance process. Whoever would like to speak for this group. Yeah, yes.
So in regards to joining Quail Hill HOA, couple things we would have to review. The proposed house to see if it met our standards or of the neighborhood, to see it conformed. So that's one thing we would have to, and I don't believe under the existing plan that it currently does. And we would also have to open it up to the full membership, and we would require a vote.
Okay.
So there's a couple things we'd have to jump through on that regard. So I don't speak for the whole membership on what that vote outcome could or would be.
Okay.
So 2 conditions, I guess.
That's it for me.
Sorry, Charlene Baker.
I would also agree with the exact thing. I don't think it will fit in our covenants, especially the older property. It just won't fit. And just to answer 2 quick questions, the Medallion Center in the island of the entrance, spent 3 hours, 4 hours at the assessor's office. That belongs to Quail Hill. That is our property. It is not taxed. You can go to the assessor's office, and that little piece is ours. And as far as sidewalks go, when Silver Oaks was put in, they put in sidewalks, but not in our neighborhood. And we talked to whoever developed that back in there, and he said, "Oh, I wish I had done that." That's all I can tell you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing nobody, I'll call for a motion. Anyone? Commissioner Carpenter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the planning commission recommend that city council approve the rezoning preliminary development plan and official development plan for Huron Farm subdivision planned unit development. Recommendation is based on a finding that the rezoning preliminary development plan and official development plan is supported by the criteria sets forth in sections 11.514 and 11.515 of the Westminster Municipal Code, with a stipulation that proposed lot 2 joins the Quail Hill Homeowners Association.
Second. I hear a second. Seeing no second, that motion dies. Do I have a new motion? Commissioner Dunn.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning commission recommend the city council approve the rezoning preliminary development plan and official development plan for the Huron Farm subdivision planned unit development. This recommendation is placed on a finding that the rezoning preliminary development plan and official development plan is supported by criteria set forth in section 11-5-14 and section 11-5-15 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say that I feel for the residents of Quail Hill, but I also feel for the applicant here. All he's trying to do is make a home. And as we have seen here, there's, first of all, there is no way, or there should be no way, that our applicant can be forced to join an HOA. What we've also seen here is that it's not likely that he would get into the HOA if he tried to join in the first place. So where would that leave us? Right back where we started. So I make this motion without any stipulations.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I definitely, I agree with Commissioner Dunn on that. That it's tough to do it. I still would think that the new development, I think that there some sort of agreement needs to be reached. Like the homeowner said, like I think they want to work with them. That was why I added that stipulation in there. Obviously, it's not going to go. But the bottom line, this West 148th Avenue is a public right of way. And this Huron Farm property is a private property, and ceteris paribus, people should be able to do what they want with their own property, including build a house. And, some of these are engineering things. Driveways, if it's not close enough from an engineering justification, it can be moved. Other things can happen in that regard. But, it's his property, and he's allowed to build under our current regulations. So that's why I'm supporting the motion.
Go ahead.
I'm going to broadcast a little bit that I'll probably vote, well, not probably, I will vote against the motion. Primarily, please.
Not the time and place for that.
Under the city code 11.5-5-15, item number 5, I don't believe that the plan is compatible and harmonious with the existing public and private developments in the surrounding area. I think the city plan department could work a little better to bring the house within closer conformance with the rest of the neighborhood. Like my counterparts, I don't think we can, I'd leave it to council and the city council to decide whether or not requiring inclusion in the homeowners association was a legal thing or not. But necessarily requiring perhaps upgrade of the existing fencing, an agreement for maintenance of the landscaping with what's existing there, and further conformance with the existing neighborhood would be necessary for me to agree.
Thank you. I'd like to make a couple of comments. One of them being on the ownership of that monument sign and that piece of property. I've been on Adams County website and I can confirm that that island that the monument sign on is Quail Hill property. I'm president of our HOA, have been for 20 years. The entry coming into our HOA is also a public right of way. We also have an island just like this with the monument sign that belongs to our HOA and we're responsible to maintain it. Doesn't mean we can stipulate what happens on the public right of way. We have nothing to do with the street. We just maintain that island and the monument sign. About 20 years ago, I was in about the same position you guys are in. I've been here since '89. So that, kind of goes, with what he was saying over here, how long we've been here. We're not newbies. And I moved into the home in an HOA that is next to a lake. And all this time, we thought the lake was ours. We maintained the lake, we stocked the lake. Well, lo and behold, the guy that actually owned the lake sold it. The new owner said, "Thank you very much. You're out. We're in. It's been nice." So just because you maintain something doesn't necessarily mean it's yours. And just because in an HOA, you had the impression that something was yours, doesn't mean it was yours. The people right across from our lake even named their HOA the Yacht Club. They have nothing to do with the lake. All this time, the people there thought they did. They thought they owned the lake. So, we all need to keep that in mind. And as far as, right away and maintaining right away, if we get more than an inch of snow tonight, I'll be on an ATV plowing a whole bunch of city right away because our HOA is responsible to maintain it. That's just, part of having an HOA, part of having a home. As far as the harmonious part, I mean, to me, building nice houses next to nice houses is pretty harmonious. I mean, it's not like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Joining the HOA is tough. Like I say, I've been HOA president for 20 years, and we had an adjacent subdivision that talked about doing that, but it's just logistically impossible because we have a reserve fund and we've got infrastructure, and how does everybody buy in, monetarily buy into what already exists? I mean, it's near impossible to bring somebody from outside of an HOA into an HOA. I'll be supporting the motion. I'm sorry, but I just think there's so many things here that a lot of them are just misimpressions. And like I say, I've been down that road before. We've sued a bunch of people before over the same thing. Save your money. It goes nowhere. Let's have a vote.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Acting Chair Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomacek.
No.
Motion passes on a 4-1 vote.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item. Sure. Let's take a 10-minute break and we'll reconvene. Yep, let's reconvene at 1:45. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. Jacob Kaza, number 2.
Amy Johnson.
Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Amy Johnson, Senior Planner with the city's Planning Division. Tonight before you are amendments to the Tri-State Preliminary and Official Development Plans for an Acadia Behavioral Health Hospital. As a part of bringing this project before you, an agenda memo has been created and tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. The agenda memo, its attachments, this presentation, the public notice in the Westminster window, the mailed notices, and the posted notices are hereby entered into the public record. Posted notices met the minimum quantity required. The notices of the public hearing were mailed to occupants, property owners, and HOAs registered with the city within 1,000 feet of the whole tri-state PUD and subdivision. 2,554 notices were mailed. The city also posted the hearing date and time on its website. Here's an aerial map showing the tri-state subdivision and vicinity with the 4 lots being replatted, totaling approximately 57 acres outlined in red. It is located at the southwest corner of Huron Street and 116th Avenue. The Behavioral Health Hospital is going on the 11-acre lot 2 in the Official Development Plan Amendment, or ODP Amendment. Here you can see that 11-acre lot highlighted in blue. Tri-State, the existing Tri-State offices are on lot 1A to the north here. And those 2 lots are designated office research and development low intensity by the comprehensive plan. Lot 1A has been zoned for office and commercial uses in a planned unit development, or PUD, since 1981, when the original preliminary development, or PDP, was approved. The amended PDP adds hospital and medical uses for lot 2, and the amended ODP for the Acadia Hospital on lot 2 complies with the comprehensive plan. Acadia proposes a 2-story building of 99,497 square feet, 195 parking spaces, and about 56% of the lot is landscaped. As stated in the agenda memo, the applicant wished to move ahead to public hearings prior to the completion of staff reviews. So staff has recommended 8 conditions for the approval of both the PDP and the ODP amendments in order to ensure that they meet all approval standards and requirements. The architecture uses earth tones of grays, browns, and cultured stone, commonly seen in Colorado and throughout the city. Section 11.514 of the Westminster Municipal Code provides 10 criteria that shall be considered with preliminary development plans and amendments. They are generally compliance with the comprehensive plan, sound, creative, innovative, and efficient planning, compatibility with the surrounding development, protection from adverse influences, safe circulation and access, performance standards. Staff finds that the PDP amendment will meet these standards with the recommended conditions of approval outlined in the agenda memo and attachments. Section 11.515 of the Westminster Municipal Code, or WMC, provides 16 criteria that shall be considered with an official development plan or amendment. Generally, they are that it conforms with the PUD, the PDP, all city codes, ordinances, and policies, exhibits sound planning with any exceptions being warranted, is compatible with the surrounding area and future development, landscaping and site design conform with city code and policies, transportation infrastructure will handle development impacts, utility infrastructure is adequate to serve the development, and the applicant is in good standing with the city. Staff finds that the ODP amendment will meet these standards with the recommended conditions of approval outlined in the agenda memo and the attachments. Staff finds that a recommendation of conditional approval of the applications would meet 2 of the city's strategic plan priorities. Priority 1, to foster and maintain a beautiful, desirable, safe, and environmentally responsible city. And priority 3, a shared sense of community. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and then recommend conditional approval of the PDP and ODP amendments as outlined in the staff agenda memo and attachments. And now we have an applicant presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is Mark Luttrell, and I think you need my address, which is 8881 South Catawba Way, Aurora, Colorado. I do thank you for your time again tonight, and I also want to thank the planning staff for their work and support of this really important project on our behalf. So I'm here on behalf of the owner operators, and I am currently the project CEO with Acadia Behavioral Health, and I'm serving as the CEO for West Pines, which is a 96-bed behavioral health hospital in Wheat Ridge that is currently on Lutheran Medical Center's campus. West Pines Behavioral Health Hospital has a long legacy and tradition of providing exceptional care for individuals with mental illness and substance use disorders. It's a critical service to the community and so many lives that have been improved, changed, and or saved because of the work that has been done here. We're really proud to be able to speak with you today about this project that's under consideration. With Lutheran Hospital moving their new site in 2024, the plan has always been for us to build a brand new state-of-the-art facility, not only to provide the care that we do at West Pines, but to be able to expand and the reach of that care and the ability to increase service lines. Just for your reference, let me just tell you a little bit more about the relationship that came between Acadia and SCL, which is now Intermountain. So we were in discussions in 2021 with this partnership with SCL. And the endeavor was truly born on a vision to provide innovative and comprehensive services between two premier organizations that put patient care first. And our missions are aligned about making sure we improve the lives of the communities that we serve. Just to tell you a little bit about Acadia, we are the largest pure play provider and the largest company of its type that's exclusively services for mental health and substance use disorders. It's really all that we do, and we are national experts. In terms of the company, we're pretty large. We have approximately 245 hospitals and treatment centers across the United States and in Puerto Rico. So as you look at the screen, you can see that we have approximately 70,000 people in care every day within our facility. And we're proud to have the opportunity to partner with such a prestigious organization as SCL and Intermountain Health as we look at this new hospital. Change the slide, please. I'm going to keep the rest of the information high level because I appreciate you staying late, like I said, to do that. And if there's any questions, please feel free. As we talk about the need for behavioral health services, I think one of the biggest pieces that we forget is mental illness is a fatal disease. And I think a lot of people forget that and they don't look at it from that standpoint. When you look at Colorado statistics, 1 in 5 adults have mental health needs within Colorado, and nearly 1 in 5 young adults in Colorado say they've seriously considered suicide in the past year. That is a staggering number as a parent and someone that works in the community. So that's really something that's really important to us as we look at this new endeavor. Less than 50% of adults have reported receiving mental health treatment, and that really speaks to the ability to access care that's so difficult. There's not enough opportunity for people to have access to care that is timely and meets their needs. So ultimately, because of those things, what we see is that suicide is the second leading cause of death among Coloradans between the ages of 10 and 44, which is also a staggering number. As we look at statistical measures that are generally used to look at the design and need for communities, we're seeing that there's a deficit of over 600 beds in Denver to meet the needs of Jefferson and Adams County. This hospital will definitely go a long way to help reduce those current needs. Change slide. Let me talk about a little bit about who we treat. I know if I asked you to raise your hand, if you knew anyone, whether it was a family member, son, daughter, spouse, coworker that suffered from mental illness or substance abuse. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but if I did, invariably, the majority of the time, 90% or almost every hand will go up. I think as we look at that, What's going to happen within the walls of the treatment in this facility is what's going to happen there. We're going to take care of those people that are in your thoughts at this point in time. Let me tell you a little bit about who our patients necessarily aren't. We aren't a prison. We aren't focused on forensic treatment. We're not a long-term care chronic hospital for individuals. We are very careful to ensure that the patients that are admitted to our hospitals do not have significant history of violence or significant interactions with law enforcement. We definitely evaluate and screen patients so we know that they're not predatory. We focus on behavioral health symptoms that are most dangerous to the patient populations that we see. And so as you look at the first screen, one of the main areas that we look at is through mood disorders. And those are things for people who have depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and traumatic experiences. Trauma is definitely one of the biggest areas that we focus on as we're looking at treatment for the patients that come through the door. To move on to the second area, we do focus a lot and provide care on those with thought disorders. And really that just means it's patients who have difficulty in perceiving the world in the same way that you and I might. So for, a diagnosis that you may think or look about, that would be someone with schizophrenia. And really, it's just one of those diagnostic areas where treatment modalities within our systems can be life-changing for them. If you move on to the third area, we also do focus on dual diagnosis. And these patients may have depression, but are also using and abusing alcohol and other drugs to self-medicate, which can also really be impacting their life even more than the depression and anxiety that may have. We also treat children and adolescents. So when we talk about kids, we typically see the kids that come from broken homes. They're in the foster care systems, and they've often been traumatized by either abuse and or neglect, and they're struggling in schools and across many areas within their life. Restoring the child and the family is mainly one of the goals in the treatment there. We also have a large array of outpatient programs, which I will answer any of those questions as we go through if you would like. Next slide, please. When we think about where our patients come from, the vast majority of them will be referred to us by emergency departments. And the placement of this hospital was selected in part because of the reasonable distance from many of our emergency departments in the area. As you know, if anybody has been in an emergency department recently, they're overloaded. There's so many patients that are there. And some of the problems that we see along that line is patients with behavioral health needs and substance use disorders at times languish in the EDs for days, weeks, even longer because they don't have a place to receive those services within the community. This hospital will definitely help unburden those EDs, and then the emergency room staff can focus on the complex medical issues that present to them. We do have a freestanding emergency or admissions department that we will do full and comprehensive screenings, both done on primary medical and psychiatric concerns. I think this screening process is extremely important so we ensure that the patients get to the right level of care. So if some of them screen with something that we're not capable of managing, we'll manage them to the next appropriate level of care, which could be a medical hospital in that point. Because we don't have an ED, I think one of the things that's really important is that we're not a lights and sirens hospital. So I think from the community perspective, people will be able to still enjoy and maintain a quiet environment in their home space without being disturbed or disrupted by the services that we provide. Next slide, please. So community outreach is an extremely important part of what we do. And I think as we look at our hospital operations, we're not just bound by the four walls of our facility. It's so important that we're not only just good neighbors, but we're engaged in the community in a very active way. We do that in a whole host of ways. Some of the things that we do are school outreach programs. We go into schools and we work with teachers and counselors on how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health illness and how to help them understand how to access care. We work extensively with military and veterans and dependents across many hospital spaces. just as we expect to do in this hospital as we go forward. We're looking forward to having some very close and deep relationships with law enforcement and crisis teams, community health centers, and providers that may need resources. We'll be listening out to the community, to other providers, to insurance companies that have aggregate data about what their issues of their members are having. We become supports for all types of organizations that are geared towards population health, geared towards making sure individuals have what they need and supporting those initiatives for the broader community. I do really appreciate your time to let me share some of this information with you today. I would like to introduce Brad Lipsey to talk through our next slide.
Good evening, Brad Lipsey with Crunk Engineering from Franklin, Tennessee. Just would like to first of all say thanks so much to Amy Johnson for her help in guiding us through this process. I just want to kind of restate some of the things that Amy told you about our project in terms of the bringing the ODP and PDP into alignment with one another. It is bound on the north side by the tri-state property, the tri-state facility, and on the south side by the newly acquired open space that the city owns. Our access will be off of Huron, and to the west, we're bound by currently undeveloped property. So with that, we'll just be here and, to answer any further questions you may have about the plans we put together.
Good evening. My name is Charles Hill, Stengel Hill Architecture, 613 West Main Street, Louisville, Kentucky. I'm project architect for the facility. Just a couple highlights about the facility. It is a licensed psychiatric hospital from CDPHE, 144 beds, 6 distinct nursing units, 2 stories, roughly 99,000 square feet. Construction start about Q2 2023, we're hoping, and then estimated open date would be a year later, Q2 2024. About $55 million construction cost. And then the economic impact for the community, it is a for-profit taxpaying entity. The joint venture is for-profit. So there's approximately $30 million of annual economic impact, property taxes, employee wages, and employee taxes, and about 265 full-time employees for the facility as well. Just a high-level aerial overview here to show you the composition of the facility. You can see on the upper right-hand corner of the building is our main entry canopy. There are several outpatient entrances along to the left of that, running down the front of the building. The patient units are set behind that, and then we do have all parking on the front of the facility. These types of facilities are their secured facilities. Everybody comes in and out the front of the building from that perspective. And then to the rear and also nested in between the building, we for exterior activity yards for patient recreation with 14-foot tall walls around those. Loading dock to the left, to the south of the building, and then our ambulance transport entrance is to the north towards the drainage ditch. Next slide. Just a very high level of the exterior materials. Amy did talk about the color scheme compatible with the surrounding region, and it also is compatible with SCL Health's branding standards for the facility. It's a combination of cultured stone, EFIS, brick, a little bit of composite metal panel for accent at the front entry canopy and entrances, and curtain wall systems on the building. And then just a couple parting views here, just to show nighttime and a daytime illustration of the facility. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Has this already been through the fire department, the remainder of the building division and all that?
Speaking about staff reviews, yes, the fire department reviewed it. Excuse me, who else did you ask about?
I'm particularly interested in the
Oh, the
fire
building.
department.
Yeah, the building took a preliminary look. Yes.
Okay. Okay. The single entrance was something that threw me, usually with.
Any other questions? Mr. Carpenter?
Yeah, just a quick one on you. Just curious, you said you screen for people who don't have violence or interactions with the police and when you're really which does seem to address a comment we received from and via email in the public. But just curious, what are what happens to those people? Are they not treated? Do they get or do you, I mean, if you refuse a patient, what happens to them? I'm just curious.
I think we work really hard with community providers to make sure that the patients are in the exact right space that they need to be. So while we can't be everything for everyone, we do vet out what that possible volatility is and can we manage it within our milieus at the time. So we take every assessment individually and really manage that to what the milieus have at the moment.
Okay, and would this be a place like if somebody threatened to kill themselves, they would be like put on a 72-hour stay there, or is this? I'm just kind of curious.
No, it's a really good question. So I would say probably in the majority of our hospital systems right now, 50 to 60% of them are involuntary on hold. So in Colorado, that would be an M1 or a short-term cert if they are suicidal, homicidal, or gravely disabled at that point.
Okay, all right. Great, that answers my question. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, can we ask questions of staff now too?
Sure.
All right. Just a couple questions. Number one, in the agenda memo, let me find the right spot for you. It's under, I marked it up. It's on page 3 of the memo. You start talking about the exceptions, which I'll get back to later. But at the very bottom, it says at the time of the memo's writing, Lot 3 is proposed in the 2040 comprehensive plan to be residential medium density. And when a non-residential development is proposed adjacent to residential property, the non-residential development is required to construct a masonry wall between the two properties. If the 2040 comp plan is approved prior to the approval of the proposed amendments, the lack of a wall would represent a third exception request. Now, we just spent 3 hours in public a couple weeks ago on that, and I even went back through and did a Control F, and there are only 6 walls in that entire memo, and the only one they're talking about is mixed. The only place I found is mixed-use neighborhood and never masonry. So is that a mistake? Should that be referring to some other design guideline that's not in the comprehensive land use plan?
Yes, the design guideline that would require that is in the retail commercial design guidelines.
Okay, so it's not in the 2040 comprehensive plan. Okay, all right, that was a big, I was like, what? Like, I didn't see that. Okay, great. And then do you have, I've been through this memo several times, and I am still not sure of all the conditions that are being asked to be approved. Do we have a handout or something, or a list?
They begin on page 11 of the agenda memo.
Okay, so the addition, yeah, but okay, so I see, but you said there's 8 there, and I thought there
Yes.
were
4 on page 11, and then the other 4 are on the next page.
Okay, all right. So those are the conditions you're requesting that we add. Okay, I was just making sure because I saw several different numbers of exceptions. I want to make sure I knew what actually we're voting on eventually. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody that signed up on the sign-up sheet we have over here, and do we have any voicemails?
Yes, well, we have, yes, Mr. Chair, we do not have any voicemails that were recorded, but we do have an email that came in after publication.
Okay.
Per instruction from our deputy city attorney, I'm reading that into our account here for us. This is from Ann or Annette C. of North Glen. She writes, Amy, hello again, hi again. So in the mail, I received info about the meeting February 28th. It showed me who was the owners. It's Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, SCL. which they own all the land around the hospital, Good Samaritan and Lafayette. Why don't they put this mental health hospital over there? Then if the patients need medical attention, such as withdrawing from drugs, they can admit them right there. That's how it is with West Pines. It's next door to Lutheran Hospital in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. I still suppose this location off 116th Avenue and Huron Street, the ranch, I still oppose this location. The Ranch Country Club and Tri-Country Engineers don't seem to care, but I do. Again, Annette C. of North Glen, Colorado. Additionally, sir, we have 9 folks on our sign-up sheet.
Okay, number one.
Just for clarification, I believe 3 of the folks are part of the applicant team, Mark Luttrell, Brad Lipsy, and Charles Hill. Do any of you gentlemen wish to speak any further, or are we good? You'll be there for questions, right? Okay. So the next person is, and I forgive me with the last name, I'm not seeing it clearly. It's like Michael Show or Shao. No comments? Okay. The next person would be Dan Rishley. Is there a Dan here? Okay. Person number 6, some initials, A.M. Dugan. Okay. Number 7, Zach Ruprecht. No comment from Zach. Okay, thank you. Marcelin Campbell. Okay, and finally, Tate Dooley. All right. So it appears that we have no one on the list, Mr. Chairman. So if you want to ask for anybody who didn't make the list, that's all we have left.
That's what we have left. And at this point, there's no point in asking for a rebuttal since nobody said anything since you gentlemen spoke. So I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend that City Council approve the PDP amendment and the ODP amendment for the subject property known as the Tri-State PUD, subject to all 8 of the conditions listed in the agenda memo. That's it.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
I'll be brief. Just want to say I'm in support. I think it's a vital service that we need for the community, and I hope I wish you luck going forward in the development and design process, and look forward to seeing this facility opened.
Anyone else? Call for a vote.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Acting Chair Mayo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Tomacek.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes on a 5-0 vote.
Any discussion of old business? Any discussion of miscellaneous, anything? Anyone want to go home? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.